Hi, this is Joanne Victoria. I'm a life coach, speaker, and published author of 8 books. I partner with information technology professionals whose work-life balance has imploded. IT professionals want more fun, more confidence, more success, and more inner peace. The Sanity Project podcast is a platform for experts to share their wisdom, expertise, and solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane life. And our guest today is going to help you guys do that. Stephanie Calahan is the business vision catalyst and is known for the fast transformations that she facilitates with her clients through working at the intersection of heart and head. She works with busy, purpose-driven entrepreneurs to own their brilliance, leverage their business, and get their message out with power, ease, and joy so they can make a powerfully positive difference in the world, exponentially up-level their profits, shift their mindset towards possibility, and take a no-excuses approach to boldly creating a highly successful and meaningful business built around who they are. With her unique combination of right-brained and left-brained thinking, intuitive insight, passion, results-based coaching, powerful questioning, and strategic systematizing magic, in record time, her clients dance with joy as their visions become reality in their business. After risking personal health and happiness as a high-achieving executive and jet-lagged consultant in corporate America, Stephanie vowed to not only create a life of real freedom for herself and her family, but also teach fellow entrepreneurs how to do the same. Stephanie believes that life is meant to be lived and that aligned mindset and fabulous vision combined with practical systems can make that happen very quickly. She is a dedicated wife, energetic and involved mom, community volunteer, sought-after transformational speaker, mentor, producer, and trainer. She lives in Illinois, USA with her husband, son, and very rambunctious Havanese dog. Welcome, Stephanie Calahan.
Thank you so much for having me on, Joanne. I look forward to this conversation today.
Thank you. We look forward to having you here. I was looking over at your website and I saw that the 2 things that I think that will really help our listeners, IT professionals, is where you spoke about the leap of faith you took, your personal story about leaving corporate America, and the quote-unquote golden handcuffs to build a business and life on your terms. And also I'm looking at how part of this personal story is of you almost dying in 2009.
Yeah.
So tell me what was going on there.
Oh gosh, it was a huge leap of faith because I started work at that consulting firm with the intention that I was going to retire from there. I mean, I really had no intention of, I thought the company was something that was perfect for me. I loved the work that I do. I loved the people that I worked with. And I really thought when I first started working there that I'd be there forever. And that's not the way it worked out. As time progressed, I advanced pretty quickly within my role. When I first started at the firm, my computer science degree was being used, and I worked on a team of programmers and testers, and we did software development. And over time, I worked my way into leadership of those teams and working almost 24/7. Joanne, I got to the point where I felt guilty if I wasn't at work when the sun was out. So
Wow.
I'd come to work before the sun went up, and I'd leave work after the sun had gone down because I had developed this workaholism that was really quite extreme. And yet I still really loved my job. Part of the reason that I had developed this workaholism was because I really liked what I was doing. Unfortunately, about the same time that my son was born, the company went from being a privately held LLC to a publicly traded company. And I say unfortunately because the result of that transition of corporate type is that the corporate culture shifted dramatically as well. So I went from a company that was very, very people-focused, which aligns to who I am, to a company that was highly political and very bottom line focused, which is really common for a lot of corporations, but wasn't what I had been working in. And as time went on, I was asked to do more and more things that were just right on my ethical line. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I would end up being very stressed. In fact, there were instances where I would be in client meetings and we'd take breaks and I'd literally physically get ill in the bathroom from the stress, clean myself up, and go back to the client meetings.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a joy. And for a long time, I felt like that's what I had to put up with, because in my mind, I was going to retire from there, right? So I was going to have to figure out how to make it work. And I'm not a quitter. I'm somebody that'll push through, journey through, soldier through, and make the best of things. And that's the way I was raised to be. And yet now I'm sleep deprived and stressed and have a huge amount of responsibility, because at the time I had anywhere from about 250 to 300 people that I was leading on my teams that I was responsible for. And some of the things that those above me in the org structure were asking me to do were impacting my team in a way that I didn't find was right. And that was actually a large part of what was causing me angst, was that I was being asked to do things as a leader that were not right for my team. And I really cared for those people that were on my team. And so the entire situation just continued to get more toxic over time. I probably stayed there 2 years longer than I should have, largely because of what I lovingly call golden handcuffs. I made really good money, Joanne. I made really, really good money. And benefits, I mean, I was working in a rainmaker world where I was getting raises on a pretty regular basis. And there really was such a thing as a free lunch. The corporate strategy was one that there were no cash registers in the lunchroom. You went in, you got what you needed, you ate and you left, and that was 24/7. That's why I could be there all the time. Your dry cleaning was there, your workout facilities were there. They had set up their benefit structure in such a way that you really didn't need to ever leave the office. And at the time, that sounded fantastic. Now it kind of sounds prison-like to me, now that I've had some time to kind of adjust from being there. But in the course of my time there, it just got worse and worse and worse. And there was a day, I remember, where I took the day off. Now stick with me here. I took the day off, and then I came down south to a university to do recruiting for that company. So it's, day off. Well, it was a working day off, I guess. But every time that I made an offer to a student that was soon to be a college grad, that would be a perfect asset to the firm, I felt guilty. Where is this guilt coming from? And so I looked at that a little closer, and it was in that moment on the drive home on the interstate that I called my husband and I said, what would you think about me leaving my job and starting my own thing? And he said, I'd support that because you've been miserable. I'm like, I didn't even realize he had noticed how miserable I was. At the time, I was disconnected to him at the time as well. I always say I married a saint because it's amazing that we stayed married through that time, because I didn't do anything to help foster the relationship. And I regret that.
Well,
so
I'm glad, I'm grateful, and I'm sure, or at least I hope our listeners are, that you are so vulnerable here to tell us some very soulful, sad parts of your life, while you were on one hand being a huge, huge, huge success, both, well, financially at least, but not emotionally.
And that's the rub, right? Because I grew up in the Midwest. And in the Midwest, we're taught if you work hard, you can get anything you want. So I was a hard worker, right?
Correct.
And on the surface, I had it all. I had amazingly good pay. I had great benefits. I had lots of clout and prestige with the job that I had. Lots of business travel, which I'm sorry, I don't find travel glamorous, but everybody on the outside thought it was really glamorous, right? And so when I started having these conversations with family and friends about I'm going to leave, they're like, are you nuts? I mean, they thought my husband was really the only one that got it. My husband was really the only one that saw what it was doing to me on the inside. Because everyone else just saw kind of the outside facade of my success. But on the inside, I wasn't successful at all. And top that off, I mentioned that, about the time the company went public, I had also had a child. So while all this is going on, I'm a new mom. And really one of the pinnacle moments for me was in the middle of the night when, you're sitting with your child and you're, feeding or whatever, and you're thinking about, what do I want to teach them, or what do I want them to learn, or maybe think about what their life might be someday. And I had this blinding flash that if I stayed there, if I stayed in that environment, I'd be teaching my son to sell himself. Because that's the only reason I had stayed at that point, was for the pay and the benefits. It wasn't for any altruistic idea around the type of work I did. At that point, I really didn't even enjoy my work. I was really there just for the pay. And I thought, gosh, that is not what I want to teach my son. And so, like I mentioned, in this ride home from recruiting, I talked with my husband, and he was very supportive. And as it was, we took this ginormous leap of faith. Because from the point of that car ride conversation with my husband, 4 months later, we sold our house. I left my job. He left his job. We bought a new house 2.5 hours south. We moved, and I started my business. Big leap of faith.
Huge.
And
but that takes courage and clarity. So you were really clear on what your direction was based on the choices that you had made in the past, and how you were determining what your new choices would be based on what made you feel better inside and healthy. Not just better, but healthy.
Yeah, and healthy mental health is a really important part of that, because I had gotten to this really ugly place where suicide was a possibility in my mind. And that's a really ugly place, right? And so it wasn't even about how do I replace this income. It was how do I get myself to a healthier place? And then what can I do that I love, right? So this huge leap of faith that we took, and it was my husband and I both taking it, it was almost a need to have, just for pure sanity's sake. Now, if you look at any advice I might give to someone that's thinking about starting a business, I wouldn't necessarily advise that they do it the way I did it. I didn't really have a business plan, so to speak. It was kind of like, I'm going to start a business, and that was my business plan. That's not exactly the way I would advise people to do it. Fortunately, it worked out for us. We were smart with the way that we handled our finances. We were smart in shifting kind of our style of living to live off of one income until I could make a go of my business. And it worked for us. But it wasn't necessarily, the smartest business strategy structure that we could have taken. At that point, I created my business, and I hadn't recovered from some of this overwork that I talked about, the addiction to overwork, that I think, I would imagine, Joanne, with you working with IT professionals, you see this a lot, right? There's
Absolutely.
Just software development, whether it's software development or a new rollout of a software within a department or what have you, within the IT world, there's just a lot of heavy time, right? And a lot of work. And I'm guessing you see that a lot.
I see that a lot. There's a lot of heavy time, as you label it, and I like that. And it's also a lot of stress that comes along with it. And also, these people cannot see clearly at what's in front of them. They just go with the flow instead of stopping, taking a breath, taking another breath, and look at, where are they? I mean, I know they have a job, and I know they're paid for their services, but they are still allowed to be human beings. And I think that's something that's left out of the equation. They forget about themselves, and they're just going for the task, the assignment, and the people around them, and who needs it, and the push, rush of people, directors, with their whips and chains, just making them go forward. And it leads to a lot of disasters. I've seen a lot of people have to take heavy drugs to get through the day. They don't tell anybody about it. I don't know where they go to get them. And I'm talking about, prescription drugs, but still, they're probably the worst thing. And then they gain a lot of weight because they don't move. I mean, their insides are dead. And I know this sounds bad, listeners. There are good parts to being an IT professional, but you got to look at the downside. And this is what we're looking at today with Stephanie Calahan. And I want to make sure before I go any further that I give out her website address so that people who are interested in more of what she has to say, she had podcasts and blogs and a lot of information on her website. It's at stephaniecalahan.com. I'm going to spell it for you. S, T as in Tom, E, P as in Peter, H-A-N-I-E, Calahan, C-A-L-A-H-A-N.com, StephanieCalahan.com. Her Twitter handle, excuse my mouth, is at Steph, S-T-E-P-H, Calahan, C-A-L-A-H-A-N. I think you should go over to both places and look at the posts she puts out on Twitter, as well as the blog posts and podcast interviews that she has on her website. But this is what concerns me, Stephanie, about IT professionals, is that they don't see clearly. They don't get an opportunity, as you didn't for 2 years, as you stated. You were in a 2-year fog thinking that everything is fine, what's the problem? And your husband even knew about it because he was observing you. And I think that everyone listening, everyone period, needs to stop and look at themselves on a daily basis. And what is going on? Are they happy? Are they enjoying themselves? Are they contributing to something that's better for the greater good? Or are they just tied down with the benefits, quote unquote benefits? Because so many large information technology companies provide loads of benefits. You, of course, have what you call the free lunch. You have more than that. It is like a very attractive prison. And then the pay may not be as high as they would like it, but all they got to do is move somewhere else and they'll get it. And it's just go across the street and there's more money over there. Joe's going to pay them an extra $50 or $75K a year. But they still are not looking inside themselves. And that's what you did. You went inside. And how did you feel when you were able to start your business and that you looked back in hindsight to see what you did to yourself?
It's interesting because when I first started my business, I didn't totally see it. I see it really clearly now.
Sure.
But there were some addictions that I had, and I say I don't drink and I don't smoke. I'm really, really quite vanilla where that's concerned. But I still had a lot of aholisms going. So I was a perfectionist. I was a workaholic. I was a people pleaser-aholic. If you can put that in there. And I didn't understand healthy boundaries. So I said yes to absolutely everything, whether it was good for me or not. And those are all habits that I built while I was in that corporate experience that I didn't heal, that I didn't address, because I hadn't gone quite deep enough when I first started my business. So I brought all that with me into creating Calahan Solutions and kind of created the same thing all over again, just my own version of it. I got over-involved in my community. I got over-involved in creating my business. I was a mom of a toddler, so that in and of itself is over-involvement. Just being a mom of a toddler is a lot. And new community and everything else. And what was interesting is even on the outsides, again, my business was financially very successful. And I won a lot of different kinds of leadership awards and community service awards. In that time frame, there's lots of awards I won that, again, on the surface makes things look really fantastic. And yet, I had corrected some personal things. So I mentioned earlier, that I wasn't that great at building a relationship with my husband, and we had corrected those things. And I was making a really big point of building a good relationship with my then very young son. So those things I had been able to correct. But when it came to self-care, I hadn't done anything to correct it. And you mentioned this, you alluded to this earlier. It came to a head in 2009 when I was told I wouldn't see 2010.
Oh.
And that entire experience was because of my overwork, addiction to stress, not taking care of me. Because ultimately what happened in my circumstances is we have this little gland called the adrenal gland that creates the baseline chemicals that the rest of your body needs to create hormones. So it creates what my ovaries need, it creates what my thyroid needs, and all the other hormone-producing functions within your body. It kind of starts with this little itty-bitty gland that creates the baseline ingredients, if you will. And you'll hear I'm running on adrenaline, right? And some people will do that where they haven't gotten a lot of sleep and then they'll catch their second, third, or 25th wind and they're running on adrenaline. But I was always running on adrenaline. And so I liken it to being in your vehicle, having the car in reverse, having your emergency brake on, your regular brake on, and your foot smashed all the way to the floor on the accelerator pedal. And your car will blow up, your engine will blow up if you do it that way. And that's what happened to me. My adrenal system stopped working altogether. And an interesting thing to know is that a number of Americans especially, but people worldwide, but a number of Americans especially, are in some form of adrenal fatigue where their adrenaline system has been taxed too much. Mine stopped working altogether. And so my body started shutting down from the inside out. When my adrenals stopped working, then my thyroid stopped being able to do what it needed to do, and all the other hormone-producing organs stopped being able to do what they needed to do. And it got so bad that I was really existing instead of living. When I say I had no energy, I would walk out to the mailbox, and our driveway is the length of about 1.5 cars. Okay, mm-hmm. So I don't have a really long driveway. I'd walk out to the mailbox at the end of the drive and have to sit at the curb for 20 minutes before I had enough energy to come back into the house. I was spent. And that role of mother that I mentioned earlier that was so important to me in wanting to build a good relationship with my son, by that point in time, he was in 2nd grade and he was taking care of me more than I was taking care of him. Wow. All the way to my husband cooking dinner and my son cutting it up like a toddler and helping me eat. Because by the end of the day, I didn't have enough energy to come into the kitchen and sit at the table. So it was really humbling what happened. But it was also my saving grace. I was really super fortunate to find a holistic health coach who was kind of health coach / life coach. I had fired all my doctors because they were making me worse and worse and worse. And I had found this individual, this professional through referral who helped me get it figured out and who helped me address some of my unhealthy ways of thinking and some of my unhealthy ways of looking at life and the unhealthy ways that I was giving to everybody but me. And the end result of that was that I didn't have anything to give to anybody else either, and that doesn't match who I am and what I stand for either. And so it takes a long time to heal your adrenals completely. In fact, I'm still healing my adrenals this many years later. I'm just more healed than I used to be. But I had a period where I had to quit everything. I had to quit my board positions. I had to quit my volunteer positions. I had to significantly cut back on my business, like barely 20% compared to where I was before. I had to focus on healing, and I had to focus on learning how to sleep, which just sounds ridiculous. But I had to learn how to do it properly. I focused on how to eat differently. I focused on how to have fun. And you think there's a lot of people that look at preschool and say, oh, our kids need more education and, we need to get them prepared for the world. Look, folks, if you don't know how to have fun, you're not prepared for the world.
Absolutely. I think that there are so many people who are adrenal deficient and don't know it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
I've used acupuncture as a treatment for my adrenal deficiencies when they occur. Less and less now, because my motto is, even though I have to work hard at it myself, is to put myself first. And I try to teach people how to do that as well, which is not easy to do. You know that. You're a successful business person and you've been successful, yet you'd never put yourself first, or at least not in the context with which you're sharing with us today. And that is the most important thing. Because if you don't put yourself first, if you're not nourished on all levels, physical, emotional, spiritual, you're coming from an empty well to try to take care of others, whether it's in business or it's in your personal life. And I just don't think people understand that. I mean, I know they don't, otherwise they'd be healthier. But they think that it's selfish to put themselves first. Right. They don't understand that that's backwards.
Right. I tell my clients, because now I work with my clients on this kind of stuff. I'm not a health coach. I'm a business coach. But when my clients come to me saying they're foggy thinking, when they're having challenges making decisions, when their productivity is in the tanker and they're having a hard time getting through their to-do list, there's tips and tactics, and I have a lot of productivity things that I can teach people. That's one of my specialties. But if they're not taking care of themselves, it doesn't matter what kind of technique, tip, or tactic, or strategy you've got. It's not going to hold.
If you can't implement something because you're exhausted, what difference does it make? I totally understand that. And I hope our listeners understand that as well. If they find themselves in a similar space where they are exhausted, where they have totally depleted, and they may not know that it's their adrenals, because that's where it starts. The adrenals run the body. And people don't get that. They don't even know it. Most people aren't not even aware of that, because they're not in touch with their body. They're not in touch with themselves on all levels, at least. That's my experience. And I like to help people as you do, even though I'm not a health coach either. But from my own experiences, I can hear the words and tell people, this is what they need to do. And then they tell me they go to a doctor. I had somebody who had sciatica, and she went for an MRI. I said, you have insurance, don't you? She said, well, yes, that's why. But an MRI does not help sciatica. Sciatica
Right.
comes from stress. Sciatica comes from your body being out of alignment. You can go to a chiropractor, you can go to an acupuncturist, and it would be done immediately. It would be gone. But people don't get that. They want to go to the regular doctors, and that's another story, another show, maybe
Right.
not even an aired show. But, the regular doctors are still practicing, so they know what they know. They don't understand the holistic approach to the body, mind, and spirit. And I think that that's what you had to go through, and I think that's also what our listeners need to understand, is they need to put themselves first, which you unfortunately did not do enough of for a period of time. You were successful in a corporate job. You had all of the perks that people read about in Fast Company and Inc. and Pick a Magazine, and yet they didn't work for you. And everybody's different. Some people can handle that stress forever and bury their emotions, bury their physical feelings, bury everything for whatever they think is important in the moment. But I think you need to in order to be a full-rounded human being, you need to look at all aspects.
Well, and what I find that it always shows in some way. It could show in a heart attack. It could show in indigestion. It could show in ruined relationships. It always shows up somehow. You just may not see it in that way from the framing that we're talking about today.
Well, I'd want to remind everybody that they should absolutely go to your website at stephaniecalahan.com. That's S-T-E-P as in Peter, H-A-N-I-E, Calahan, C-A-L-A-H-A-N.com, Stephanie Calahan. And her Twitter handle is at Steph, S-T-E-P-H-C-A-L-A-H-A-N. Stephanie, what would you give, two things that you would tell our listeners to do to stay healthy, either mentally, spiritually, emotionally, in their job, so they would take some lessons from listening to this story that you've so graciously shared? What could you give them? Two things, two takeaways.
There's one thing that I would encourage you to do, that everybody can do and that you can start it right now, is make sure that you're functioning with a healthy mindset and that you are intentional with how you respond to what life's bringing you. And so what I call that being instead of doing, because your being will impact your doing. And so I'll give an example to kind of help explain what I'm talking about. Say you're in traffic, lots of traffic, and it's backed up, and there's a little bit of an opening in front of you, and you're moving forward, and all of a sudden somebody swerves around you and cuts you off. You have a choice. You have a choice to be intentional on how that one life experience impacts the rest of your life. You can choose to be irritated, frustrated, ticked off, cussing, screaming, yelling, and it can carry into the rest of your day. I can't believe that person cut me off, and it impacts all the rest of your day in what you're going through with your work, and maybe into the evening with whatever personal things that you have going on. Or maybe you start your day with the intentional choice of being forgiving, understanding, and loving. I'll just pick those three for this example. And the same situation happens, and that person cuts you off. And rather than being angry, you look and say, wow, I hope that nothing serious is going on. I hope they're not rushing to the hospital. You know, it was one car length. It won't make me that much more late to work. Exact same situation that carries a very different outcome for how the rest of your day is going to be. And so what I encourage my clients to do, what I practice as well, is intentional being within the day. So you pick 2 to 5 states of living, states of response to the things that you have going on, whether it's proactive, empowering, loving, forgiving, understanding. You know, there's loads of different adjectives that you can pick, whatever ones resonate with you the most. And then practice it. How are you going to take those states of being and apply them to whatever circumstances happen to come up in your particular day? I know that back when I was in that corporate space, I was very reactionary to things that happened. Even when I was in a strategic role, kind of planning out, long-term planning within the daily grind, I was still very reactionary. This one technique allowed me to respond, to shift my own mindset and my own perspective of the world around me into a much healthier way of living, and a much happier way of living, really, because life didn't happen to me. I chose how I was going to respond to life. So that would be my first suggestion. And my second suggestion would be that you find at least one way every day to give back to yourself. For some people, that could be meditation, prayer, dancing in your kitchen to your favorite music, right? It could be reading for fun, so within your workday even, it could be deep breathing. I know back when I was first starting to make that shift from corporate to business, I set an alarm every 3 hours on my computer, and all it said was breathe. And I'd stop just for a couple minutes and remind myself of where I was and give myself space for just a few minutes and then go back into work. You know, there's loads and loads of different ways that you can give back to yourself, from going and getting a massage to hiking a trail to listening to a podcast that uplifts you. You know, there's loads and loads of ways. Some things are more dollar and time intensive. Some things cost nothing and take very little time. Pick something, just one thing that resonates with you, and start giving back to yourself today.
Those two are perfect. The first one, I'll just concise it down to states of being. Choose it's like people say you have to try to be happy, you have to find happiness. No, you can choose to feel happy, you can choose to feel love, you can choose to feel calm. It's all a choice and it's all up to you. And number two, put yourself first. Mm-hmm. Period. Yeah. Just do that in whatever way works for you. If it's breathing, if it's taking a walk, if it's reading a book, if it's dancing in your kitchen, dancing on the front lawn would be really brave. Just put yourself first. You'd be surprised. Cumulatively, these processes work.
Oh, well, Stephanie, adds up, yes.
Do you have any last words, Stephanie, for our listeners?
You know what? Listeners, you are all worth it. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to prove their worth through their work. Just being you are worth it. So it's okay to take care of you too.
Can't get any better than that. You're worth it. There you go. Thank you, Stephanie Calahan. Thank you, listeners. And I hope you got some great hits from today's guest. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com and continue the conversation on my podcast page. And get a free copy of my book, The True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.